I'm Cliff. We're going to talk about some essential development tools for Joomla today. I'm just going to jump right into it. Hopefully hopefully it doesn't switch. Okay, I'm Cliff. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I run my own business there. I'm part of the Joomla 4 UX team. I'm the Joomla Day Denver organizer, and I'm the Denver Joomla user group organizer. That's about all the time I I wish I could do more, but that's about all I can manage are those three things right now. So I've been an active contributor to Joomla for the past year. My slides are going kind of slow, so give me a second here. Maybe I just need to be in front of it. I traveled a really long way to be here. I just made a little map. It's almost 30,000 kilometers to get here and back home. So I'm really glad to be here. This is my first trip to India, and it's awesome. And I'm honored to be a speaker. And thanks to Joomla and the events team for having me. So this is where I'm from, Denver, Colorado. It doesn't always look this beautiful, but it's a very pretty town. It's the gateway to the Rocky Mountains, beautiful sunsets, and we also get a lot of snow. It's actually snowing there right now, so I'm glad I'm here. A little bit about me. Today we're gonna talk about some tools that I use. So I think there's a reason that I specifically use what I use, and the things that I use might not work for everybody. I went to school. I was a music major, psychology minor. So naturally, I'm a website developer. Makes perfect sense. I'm self-taught completely in websites. I just started kind of learning this stuff in the music industry, doing marketing and basic websites for people. So I have that perspective of I've learned all this stuff from the ground up, so I know what it's like to struggle learning these things. It's taken me almost 10 years to learn all the things that I know. But having that perspective helps me deal with my clients because they don't know how to do anything, and that's why they hire me. So in 2007, I started using Joomla version 1.5, and that worked very well for me, and I started my own company in 2010. I was lucky to get a job at Rocket Theme, working support for a couple years, and I've been a jet-setting Joomla speaker and contributor since last year. Was my first Joomla event outside of my local jug speaking, and since then I've been to several Joomla days in the US, J and beyond. I was at the Code Sprint in Greece last month, and now I'm here. Never really traveled outside the US until about a year ago, and now I've been around the world 3 times this year, so it's been a great year for me. So what I do in my business, I do all things, and I don't necessarily need to read them all. There's a lot of stuff. I run a business, I have meetings with clients, we're doing research, website development, front end, back end, maintenance, SEO, internet media marketing, social media marketing, content development, content marketing, all that stuff, client training. I don't do all of this stuff every day, but maybe a couple things here and there. Sometimes I'm dealing with all of it. I have a team members that help me with some of this stuff, but these are all the different things that they're all important aspects to running a website, and I do all of them. I basically solve problems for clients. They come to me and say, we need our website to do X, Y, Z, and I say, no problem, we make it happen. So, technical difficulties. Stand by. Sorry, I'm a little jet lagged too, so I'm a little tired. So I'm not necessarily an expert at any one of these things. I know a lot about all of them, kind of individually, but what I'm really good at is putting all these things together, the big picture, assembling a final website for my clients that do whatever they may need it to do. And there's so many different applications for websites, from small business to enterprise and everything in between. All of these things are important, and that's really what I do, is I put all these things together. Enough about me. We're here to learn about some tools. We're going to talk about some extensions first. It's a real short list of stuff. I'm really, I'm a big believer in sticking with the core as much as possible. Really limiting the number of extensions and plugins that you use definitely helps you during upgrades, conflicts, and I mean, there's less problems all around. We're going to talk about some desktop applications too. I'm a Mac user, nothing against PC users, but some of the stuff that I use is Mac only, so I might ask some of the PC users what they might recommend for that. And then just some various online cloud-based tools. And I'm not affiliated with any of these companies. They're not paying me to advertise for them or anything like that. It's just stuff that I use. I find these things to be useful, and I pay full price for all of them. So most of the stuff we're going to talk about is free, though. So let's jump into it here. Okay, so these two get installed, like the first things I do in Joomla are install these two Akiba admin tools for security and just general maintenance, and Akiba backup. Is there anybody who's not using Akiba backup? Anybody doesn't? Okay, you guys are going to have to leave the room. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, honestly, I didn't use it for a long time either. I just didn't really see what the need for it was because I had, cPanel or, just hosting backups and whatnot. I'm going to show you guys some tricks with it. It is a backup utility, but there's so much more you can do with it. And we're going to talk about that. They're both free, akibabackup.com. There are pro versions that you can get. They have additional features. I personally have never needed them, so I just use the free versions, but some people find you get support with the subscriptions and all of that. So admin tools is very basic. It just provides a simple set of tools for security. First thing, you can have an administrator block, so when you go to /administrator to log in, it gives you a little htaccess block. So you have to log in to that before you can actually get to the backend login. That's helpful. If somebody's trying to hack into your backend all the time, that'll definitely deter them. You can adjust and configure all your file permissions, which it's not necessarily something you have to deal with all the time, but when you do have to deal with it, it can be a real pain in the butt if you don't have something like this. It also will optimize your database. You can change your prefix. It will file utilities. Aside from the permissions, it'll clean out your temp folder. Things like this. I came across this when I was using Joomla 1.5, one of the first sites I ever built. It was for a friend of mine, and he was the target of some really nasty hackers, and they just would not let up on him. They hacked into his hosting account, did a bunch of crazy stuff. I installed this and locked it down, and never had a problem with it again. That site is actually still running Joomla 1.5, and it's still fine. So very useful for free. Like I said, I don't necessarily need to use this very often, but it's very handy when I do. So it's definitely worth having in there. Okay, so Akiba Backup and Kickstar. Kickstar is the restore utility. So Akiba Backup, you install into Joomla. It's a component, and it's a backup utility. It makes a backup of your Joomla website, your files, and your database. Kickstart is a utility that you don't install into Joomla, but you use it to restore the backup. It's actually very simple. You upload your file, your backup file, and then you run it through this interface. It's very easy to use. It's so simple that you can move your sites around everywhere. It's very fast. Some other features when you're going through the Kickstart interface, you can choose different administrator passwords and configure various options while you're installing it. So, for example, I'm going to kind of talk about my workflow, but when I move these things, say I pull something from live to a local server, I always use the same password on my local server, so I don't have to remember 900 different passwords, so I can kind of set that as I go, and it just makes life easier in a lot of ways. You can also automate backups through Amazon CDN, and you can set it up to exclude files. It's got different configurations, different profiles. Say you have like a multi-site environment. You could have it skip over subdomains or different folders, or only pull certain tables out of your database, and then you can save all of that and use it in different sites. Very cool. And I'm going to talk about some different things that we can do with that. So, like I was just saying, I do a lot of work on my local server. I actually prefer to work on a local server just because it's faster, and it also kind of eliminates the possibility of me destroying a client's website while it's online. So this is a typical scenario. You know, a client will come to me and say, you know, we need you to do X, Y, Z to our Joomla site, or we're looking for a new Joomla developer, can you give us an estimate? What I'll do is I'll go on their site and I'll pull a backup of it. If they don't have a Kiba installed, 9 times out of 10 they do, but if they don't, I'll install it, I'll make a backup, pull it down, I'll use a Kiba to install that backup on my local server, and then I can do whatever I want at that point. And their site's still running the same way, but I have a copy of it on my local server, so I can turn off all the extensions or put in new templates, that sort of thing. I can basically break it and rebuild it or do whatever I need to do with it without disturbing their live site. From there, what I'll generally do is I'll move it to a development server, which is either my development server or maybe a subdomain on their server, somewhere where they can look at it, like they can see the work that I've done. You know, here's your new template or your new design, or check this feature out. They can give me approval, whatnot. Then I'll take a backup of that and move that to their live server and replace the two. And then it kind of just goes in circles. A lot of times from there, I'll just leave, you know, I'll have my copy on the dev server. It'll be like a mirror site or something, so we can, almost like a staging type server. But I'm always constantly going between those 3 areas with what I do, because it seems to be the best way to work without disturbing their actual website. Because you can't have somebody's website down for 2 weeks while you're working on it. Nobody likes that very much. But also what it does, I mean, Akiba streamlines this process because it's so easy and fast to move the sites with Kickstart. It also, you know, it doesn't affect the live site, like I said, and you know, as I'm doing this, now I have 3 different copies of this website, so I've got multiple copies of the backup, which is always good, just in case something goes wrong. You know, I'm leaving a trail of backups everywhere I go, so, you know, if I mess something up, I always have that other backup I can fall back on. Now I have 3 sets of backups. I'm kind of crazy like that. I'm always afraid of losing stuff, so I make multiple copies of everything, and this just kind of does it naturally. So. And what it also does is it will identify issues with their live server. So my local server is configured exactly the way I want it. I know that it works perfectly, and so is my dev server. So if everything's working fine and I move it to their live server and now there's problems, I immediately know that it's something with their server configuration, because all my server stuff is already configured correctly. The only difference is now it's on their server and now we have problems, so I know right away I need to start looking at their PHP configuration or their server configuration. So it kind of helps me identify problems with their setup in the process as well. Jeez. Okay. So another thing you can do with Akiba backup is you can create, I call it a boilerplate. It's a pretty common term. Basically, in this scenario, I have just a Joomla installation on my local server that doesn't have any content in it. It's I install the extensions and configurations and codes and stuff that I use all the time into this thing, and then I make a backup of it, and then I'll use that to launch a new site with it. So instead of installing Joomla, like a core Joomla, like downloading Joomla and installing it, and then installing all these extensions after that, I can just install this backup, and it's already got, I mean, kind of in the screenshot here, it's got, you know, admin tools, Akiba backup, and Gantry, and Proforms, and a couple other things in there. It's all in there, and I can just, whenever updates come out, I can just go into that installation. I can update all the extensions in Joomla whenever I need to. So it's always, I can keep it up to date. It's very low maintenance, and it allows me to kind of get a jump start on it. I can skip that half hour where, you know, I install things or move my files, those sorts of things. So you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. And this is you know, I mean, I've heard of a lot of people use it this way, but it's not something you would necessarily think of doing with a backup utility. So it's kind of, you know, you can make your life easier with the Akiba backup, and it's highly recommended. So let's go ahead. All right, so let's talk about a couple of content editors. There's a lot of content editors out there. These 2 are the ones that I've been using RockPad for a while, but Arc Editor, it seems to be the one that my clients like the most. It's got front-end editing. And the interface is really nice. It's very configurable. You can set up different profiles and options. It's got a bunch of different plugins. And we'll go into both of these a little bit more on the next slide here. So Arc Editor. And by the way, I've already put all this information on my website, and I have all the links to the products and downloads and stuff. So if you want to, don't feel like you have to write this down. If you just want to head to my website at some point, all the links are there. So, and these are just screenshots from their website. If you go to their website, they've got all sorts of cool little demos and whatnot that illustrate what it does better than I can do here. But it's basically, it's a what you see is what you get style editor. It actually has, the code editing is actually not bad either. The big thing with it is it has front end editing. So when you're on the front end, it has a little toolbar that comes out, and you can just click on, like you'll mouse over, and it'll have like the little box there, and you can edit articles, modules, all that's directly from the front end. My clients like that a lot, so they don't have to go to the articles and this and that. They can just kind of click on what they want. It's very slick. And even in the back end, it's got an inline editing type thing where it shows like visual blocks. Like I said, my clients, I've had the most luck with this editor in Joomla with clients. I don't necessarily need that, but my clients do. So it's if you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth checking out. It's free. There's a free core version, and then there's also a subscription. It's like a 6-month subscription. I think it's I can't remember the price, somewhere in the $50 range, but it has more features. It supports third-party templates, that sort of thing. But it's definitely cool. I'd check out the free version if you haven't seen it before. This one is the one that I use. I'm a developer. Obviously, my clients can't use this. It's a code editor. RockPad, it's made by Rocket Theme. It's free. You can just go on their website and download it. It rivals a desktop code editor. It's got different themes, shortcuts, code folding, all kinds of different things. You can have different colors, different, it closes, auto-close your tags, all of that stuff. Anything you would expect to see in a regular code editor, this does, and it's got a full screen mode. I can't live without it. I think it's it's my favorite editor, but then again, I prefer to work with code. Many people don't. If that's the sort of environment you're used to working in, you'll definitely find this to be a useful text editor. So, yeah. Okay, so from there, a template, using some kind of a template framework, I guess for lack of a better word. There's a lot of frameworks out there, but even just using a template as a starting point, I think is essential. And basically, it says choose a framework that works for you and learn it and use it. I use Gantry. Obviously, I used to work at Rocket Theme, so it's what I know. I know it better than any of the other ones. It's not, it's my favorite one. I can do whatever I need to do with it very quickly. Some alternatives might be like Warp or T3 or even just the Joomla default template. The advantage to that is that you're starting in the same place every time. You can put your custom codes into it. You kind of know what you're getting. If I would put this into my Akiba boilerplate and I install this, it's going to be a basic, Gantry installation that's got maybe some of my custom code libraries in there. It's just all ready to go. Whichever framework works for you is kind of up to you to find out. I really like Gantry. It's very flexible. I know a lot of beginners find it a little bit difficult. There is a bit of a learning curve there. And the new version just came out, but even Gantry 4 has a very flexible back-end layout, styling. Gantry 5's drag and drop columns is kind of a little screenshot over there. This is also free, by the way. If you just go to gantryorg, if you go onto Rocket Theme with their subscription, you can get their commercial templates, and they do some really cool stuff with it. Some of the benefits to it, it's very, the interface is very simple to use, and you can do a lot of stuff from the back end, but if you need to get in there and do some custom stuff, it's very flexible and customizable. You can dig into the codes and do pretty much anything you need to do with it, and it's not really that complicated. It has good documentation also. I really liked in Gantry 4, it had a built-in less compiler, which was very cool because we had that in Joomla 1.5, even though that was a feature that was coming out in Joomla 2.5. We kind of got a jump start on the less compiling, and you don't have to install anything or do anything with it. Joomla actually has a less compiler, but it's not part of the core package. You can put it in there. With this, you can just install it if you're doing any work with. I do a lot of CSS. That's probably the code language I work with the most. So if you're trying to learn less, that's a good option. Gantry 4, Gantry 5 has Sass in it, built in as well. So basically, you can just drop in a custom .sass file and just start writing Sass or just regular CSS. It compiles it on the fly. Every time you refresh, you can put it into a development mode, so it refreshes every time, or you can put it into a static mode. It's a great way to learn these languages if you're not used to using a CSS compiler, because the installation's very easy and it's all built in, and it's very simple to get going on it. So I've found with a lot of these things where you install them, just the installation process for some of these things is so complicated, it scares a lot of people away. You can jump right into it with this. That's one of the things I really love about it. The big thing, the thing I love the most about Gantry 5 is that the HTML output on the front end is super light. It's super fast on the front end. I found with a lot of these page builder template things, it's just the output that you get, it's just so much HTML, just divs inside of divs inside of divs. This is super light, it's super fast. I really like it a lot. It's a little complicated, even for me. It took me a while to kind of get up to speed on it, but it's definitely worth checking out. Another big advantage to this, and I believe Warp also has cross-platform support. So when I work on some other platforms as well. Some other, the big W. I do a lot of work with that one. But what I like about this is I know this so well in Joomla, I can put this into WordPress, or I believe there's a standalone version also, but when I'm working in WordPress, it's almost like I'm working in Joomla because I already know this interface. It's exactly the same thing. All the custom codes that I've done in Joomla will also work in the other platforms. So that's, a lot of people, want to use WordPress or want to learn how to use it because it's very popular. I love Joomla way more, even though I do about an even amount of work in both of them. But if you're trying to learn another platform, this is a good way to do it because you've already kind of got a jump start on it. You don't have to start from scratch necessarily. So, and it's free. Like I said, you can get a subscription through RockTheme if you want to. I like their templates a lot, but it's worth checking out. If you're looking at a template framework system, I think it's especially if you're starting out, it's a good thing to have. Just kind of gives you a general starting point. So we're going to kind of jump into some desktop stuff now. Local server environments is kind of what I was talking about. I use MAMP Pro, which is the kind of upgrade version of MAMP, which is free. MAMP Pro is not free. But it's very reasonably priced. That's for Mac only. For Windows, there's XAMPP and WAMP. I remember one of them worked better for me than the other one. I don't know which one. I just don't use PCs very much. Anybody use one or the other? WAMP or AMP or XAMPP? MAMP? Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't have anything against PCs at all. I just don't know how to use them very well. I've always used Macs my whole life. It's just what I know. So, but basically what this local server does for you is it lets you run Joomla on your computer in an offline environment. It installs Apache, MySQL, PHP, and the PHP MyAdmin for your database management. It's basically like having a hosting account on your computer, and that's what allows me to, kind of do that Akiba thing that I was talking about, where I can work offline, especially when I'm traveling. I had a very long flight to get here. It was like 20 hours. I'm not going to have internet access for most of that, but I can still work. I can still do my work. I don't have to worry about, the internet going down or the servers being slow or whatever. It's just running right off of my computer. It's often a lot faster, and I can set the limits, like I can set my memory limits really high, and I have total control over my configuration. So it's, I think it's essential to have this in one form or another. These are, those are, I use MAMP obviously, but there's several different options. You could actually do it without MAMP on a Mac, but I believe that the MAMP is faster than the built-in Apache on Apple. That's my understanding. I've never tried to do it that way. I've always just used this. So if you're a developer of any kind, if you're working on people's sites, you definitely want to set up a local server. And it can be a little tricky to set up at first, but with any server, it's kind of once you get it set up the way you want, you don't really have to mess with it much. It can be a chore the first time setting it up, but once you get everything dialed in, it's dialed in, and it will always work from there. So definitely need that. So these are the desktop applications that I use on a daily basis, and some of these are Mac only. There's plenty of IDEs and FTP applications for Windows. I can't recommend any just because I haven't used any of them, and I don't know which ones are better than the others. But I use Panic Kota, which is it's a very simple IDE. It's not necessarily as full featured as some of them, but it's very useful to me. I also use their FTP program called Transmit, which is awesome, and it will work with any code editor or IDE program on a Mac. It's a very useful FTP file transfer application. Sublime Text will run on both Mac and PC, and it's probably the most advanced just text editor out there, but that's all it does. It's just a text code editor. It doesn't have FTP, or that's all it does. So, but it's very, very good at that. CodeKit is a new thing. I just kind of found this earlier in the year, and it's indispensable at this point. And I'm not sure if there's anything comparable on PC. If you go on their website, on their FAQs, it says, what if I'm on a PC? The answer is buy a Mac, which I don't think is a very helpful answer, but I was kind of poking around and I didn't find anything for PC that kind of does. What it does is it compiles different code languages. Like if I wanted to do, say, I was working on a static HTML site that didn't have a less compiler, this will compile less or Sass or jQuery and print out static CSS files. So basically I can use any code language I want with anything. It's very, I'll show you guys a little bit more about it. Iraxxess File Merge, it's a file comparison, and I know there's plenty of options for this on PC. Actually, this does work on PC also, but there's a lot of different programs for this, but what this does is it compares files. Like say, I want to upgrade my template. A lot of templates for Joomla don't have automatic upgrades because they don't want you to overwrite. If you have some custom work in there, they might get overwritten if you just FTP the files or reinstall. You might lose all your custom changes. What this will do is you can take the two folders and it'll show you which files are different, so you can just kind of patch in what you need without losing any of your custom work. And you can actually even go into the files and do it line by line. And I use the Adobe Creative Cloud, which is, I just, it's Photoshop, Illustrator, Fireworks. There's about 10 different ones. It's a little pricey, but it's definitely worth the money. It just saves me so much time. And I'm going to go into each one of these a little bit. Kota is, it's basically a code editor. It's $100, but it also has FTP. You can get, SSH terminal. It can hook into GitHub. It can do all kinds of different little things, and it does all of these things, not necessarily as well as say like Transmit is a standalone FTP application, and that is way better than the FTP in Kota. But what I like about Kota is it has all these things in one window. I can if I just need to upload a file that I'm working on, I can do it very easily. Or if I just need to jump into terminal and run a command line or two, it's all right there. It's all in one window. It's very simple and easy. Like I said, if you need more powerful features with any of these things, some of the other standalone applications are probably a better bet. But I don't really need to get too in depth with any of this stuff. It works fine for me, and I just like the ease of use. It's only $100, and it's a good option if you're just looking to get an IDE code program for the first time, or just kind of dipping your toes if you haven't used a program like that before. This is actually a really good one to start with, in my opinion. It's Mac only though, unfortunately. Transmit I've talked about. It's file transfer FTP. It's awesome. Like I'll use this at the same time while I'm using Kota. I can use this to manage sites. I can upload large files with this while I'm doing other stuff in Kota on a different site. You can set it up so you can just drag and drop your files onto your desktop and all sorts of different things. It's very quick and useful. It's probably the most powerful file transfer thing I've ever seen, and it's very popular. It's very cheap as well, about $30 US. I don't know how much that is in rupees. I don't understand the conversion rate here. What's that? A lot. Okay. Okay. So Sublime Text is it's very powerful. It doesn't have any FTP. So if you're going to use this, you're going to need something like Transmit or some kind of other FTP application. It's very powerful. You can customize it in a ridiculous number of ways. It does pretty much anything you can imagine. It's got all kinds of extensions and plugins you can install from a command line. It's themes. Pretty much anything you can do with a code editor can be done in any way you can possibly imagine this. It's pretty complicated at first, but once I kind of wrap my head around how it worked, there are definitely some features that I fall back on it for a lot. The search is very fast and it's very useful. It can do it can search like a whole site. So in my workflow scenario, I download these files to my local server, and now I've got them on my local server, and I'm trying to find a little bit of code that I can see in my code inspector. I can just grab that and stick it into Sublime and search for it, and it'll show me all the files in my installation where that pops up. That feature alone for me is I use this for that a lot. I always have it open. It's always doing something for me. It has a lot of multi-cursor, editing features. It's very cool. It's very complicated though. If you're just getting into using a code editor, it's pretty advanced. But if you're doing a lot of development and a lot of code writing, it's a very useful tool. A lot of the developers that I know just rely on it. My programming is pretty intermediate. I do a little bit of programming, but I don't do a lot of heavy lifting with it. But it does have some very useful features. It's very advanced. If you're looking for an advanced code editor, this is definitely one to check out. Okay, so CodeKit. CodeKit is awesome. It is only for Mac. It's like $30 US. What it does is it compiles Sass, it compiles less, it compiles HTML, JavaScript. It's got a one-click installer, uses Bower, which basically you can install like Bootstrap, jQuery, all the different libraries for those things. There's about 6,000 different components to it. So what you can do in this interface is you pick your template folder or wherever you're working at, and it kind of creates an association with that. So whatever type of file you're working on, it will automatically compile it and spit it out for you. So it'll minify your JavaScript, it'll compile your less or your Sass or whatever you might be working on. In my case, I've been using less for a couple years, and I love it. But obviously, Sass is winning the CSS compiler battle because everything's kind of going that way. And I'm learning it, and I actually like Sass better now that I'm learning it. But I'm still learning it. So what I can do is I can still work in less, and then I can have it output to Sass, and then I can compile that to CSS kind of in the meantime. So it kind of enables me to work the way that I want to work. And I can use, you can even install WordPress with this thing. It's pretty wild. It's got all kinds of different libraries. Whatever you might need to use, it's all in there. So instead of going through, GitHub command line installations, you just install this one program. It's all in there, and it can compile any language, any library on the fly. You could use it in Joomla. You could take something you're using in Joomla and compile it into a standalone HTML site. It basically takes away all the limitations of, say, Gantry has a Sass compiler. So if I'm working on a different framework that doesn't have that, and I still want to use Sass, I can, because once you use less or Sass, going back to regular CSS it's pretty tough. I can't do it. It's that's a lot of writing. So with this, I don't have to. I can always write less or Sass or whatever I want and just have it output the CSS files. Very cool. If you're a Mac user, I wish I knew of something similar for PC because it's a very useful tool. Like once I came across it, I was like, wow, how had I not heard of this before? It's very awesome. What I can do also is I have my own Sass and less libraries that have my own little code functions and style tricks that I use all the time. I can just keep those in a folder, and then I can assign that library to any of the projects that I'm working on. So I don't have to copy multiple files into different templates. I just have one folder that has my library on it. And if I ever update that library, it's going to update my library across all my projects. It's also got a thing where you can you upload your files and it will refresh all your browsers if you're testing on different mobile devices and your desktops. There's all kinds of little automation tricks you can do with it. Very awesome. So some workflow examples. Kota and Sublime both have a CodeKit plugin. So I use the Kota CodeKit plugin. So when I open a file in Kota from a project that I'm using CodeKit with, it automatically opens CodeKit. So I save something, it compiles it, and then I can use all my libraries and all that's pretty much what I just said. Transmit and Sublime is kind of what I was talking about. I'll download stuff to my local, and then I can search through the files, search and replace. I can locate codes that I'm trying to find. There's some links here that kind of explain all the different kind of ins and outs of setting up the Kota plugin, or the CodeKit plugin with Kota and Sublime, and some very advanced ways for using it. I said all these examples are, you can download this PDF off my website. And these are, this is actually how I learned how to do a bunch of this stuff. There's a lot of great tutorials out there. It's very useful. Once I kind of got into this workflow, it's, I can't imagine doing it any other way. So, okay, Iraxxess Merge, basically it's a diff merge file comparison application. It can do 2-way and 3-way searches, so you could actually search across 3 different folders. If it's hard to imagine why you would need to do that, it's if you're doing any kind of template updating or custom theme work at all, where you've got different versions of things and there's custom files all over the place. It can help you deal with that. I don't necessarily use this a lot anymore. I've kind of found other ways of keeping my custom work separated, but sometimes you need to, you just need to find a file that's been updated somewhere so you don't wipe out some custom work or whatever. It's a great program for that. It's a little pricey. It's about $130 US. There are plenty. I know on PC there's way more options for this sort of thing than Mac. For some reason, PCs seem to handle this task better than Macs. I'm not sure I understand why, but that's the case. So the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, it's about $50 a month for a subscription, but I think you have to do like a year minimum. It's about $600 a year US. But you get everything. You get Photoshop, Illustrator, Fireworks, all the media encoder. I think you get Premiere, After Effects. Basically, it just ensures that whatever files my clients come to me with, whether they have video files or some weird format, or if they have illustrators or this or that or the other thing, I can always open it and manipulate it in some way. Even if I just resave it into a different format, I can work with anything that anybody throws at me. And Photoshop and Illustrator are pretty much, I use those on a daily basis for all sorts of different things. And at the price, considering that Photoshop itself used to cost like $900 just for the one program, it's actually, the price is pretty good. And it's always up to date, and you get 15, 20 applications. If you're doing a lot of multimedia work, and websites are, they really are multimedia. You've got audio, video, all types of different image formats, PDFs. This also, it has Acrobat. Not just the Acrobat reader, but the actual Acrobat, where you can create Acrobat files and forms, stuff. That's very useful at times. It's indispensable for me. Not everybody might need it. It really depends on what you need to do. It also has some additional cloud storage, and you can save custom libraries and fonts, and they've got a stock photo service now of some sort, and you can share and get feedback from the community and all of that. It's that stuff's just kind of bonus. I don't really use any of that much, but it's all in there. So one part of this that's kind of overlooked a lot of times is the Adobe Bridge, and I believe if you just buy Photoshop, it comes with this. This is kind of my secret weapon sometimes. Maybe you've had this experience where a client says, I just uploaded 700 pictures into Dropbox, and I need to put them all on my website, and they're all named like dscx1274.jpg, and there's, this, it does batch renaming, so you can rename everything. You can, if you wanted to create multiple sizes, it will do batch image processing through Photoshop, so you can create different sets of sizes. It's also very useful. And this is just a screenshot of one of my folders. It's got Illustrator files, zip files, different graphics and stock things that I'm using. So if I click on one of these EPS files or whatever, it will open Illustrator. If I click on one of the image files, it will open Photoshop. It just kind of helps me navigate through all these different file types that I might have to work with, and it also helps me repair any file name issues. If there's like weird characters or corrupt file names, you can just batch rename them to whatever you like, and it's got all kinds of numbering options and whatnot. Very useful tool. It's kind of more unknown, but it's part of the suite. I believe it comes with Photoshop if you just buy that by itself. So that's kind of the end of the desktop stuff. That's really all I need. It's just 4 or 5 things that I use them all day, every day, and they do everything I need to do. These are just some other things that I find useful. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows about Gmail and Google Apps, but I think it's the best email you can get out there. Google Apps is pretty standard. Everybody's using that for calendars, docs, whatnot. It's well worth the $5 a month for an email account, in my opinion. I recommend that my clients get on that. I also use Sketch a lot. I use Sketch a lot more than I use Evernote. They're made by the same company. Sketch is it's basically you can take screenshots, and it's got, you can write text on them and do arrows. Great for documentation for clients. I can just be like, point an arrow, be like, type in this box and hit save, and that's all you got to do. And then it will automatically upload it to your Evernote account. You can share it, and it's good for note-taking and collaboration. Trello also is great for organization. I would definitely recommend. I use Trello a lot more probably than I think that's a great program. It's basically like a pin board. It's got different. You can organize different things, kind of like, you'd be sticking things on a board with like Post-it notes or something. But you can upload files to it. You can turn it into a calendar. You can add team members to it. People can comment on it. It's got task lists. It's open source. It integrates into a ton of different things. It's very awesome. If you haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Some other things I use, Pinterest. It's not just for arts and craft tips, but I do use it for that. I guess the secret's out. I love Pinterest. It's awesome for research. It's infographic central. If you guys go to my website and follow my Pinterest page, I've got like tons of web design, web development, UX, UI, pin boards of just hundreds of thousands of infographics. I mean, you could just go through that stuff for days on end. There's so much information on there. People don't really think of it for that, though. It's more kind of like grandma's knitting class or something. But there's a lot of great information. I use it for research a lot of times. Hootsuite I use for social media posting automation. Huge time saver. It's basically a calendar. Every Monday morning from 9 to 10, I just go onto my Hootsuite and I set up all my social media posts for the week for my company. I mean, I do that for clients all week too, but I just make a little bit of time, spend an hour there, and I can set up all my posts for the next week or two, and then I don't have to worry about it. Like, they just get posted to all my business accounts as I go. It's good for strategizing social media campaigns. And then for accounting, I use FreshBooks, which is awesome if you're doing like an internet business. It seems to be perfect for website developers. I've had nothing but luck with it. It saves so much time. So that's just, I know we're kind of getting out of Joomla stuff here, but it's a great service. The best extensions and applications to use are the ones that work best for you, and that's something I said. And I'm pretty cool. You can tell by the picture. And the point is, like I said, I'm a Mac user. A lot of people are PC users. I don't necessarily think one is better than the other, but I just know this better, and that's why I use this. And if you feel more comfortable with PC, then you should use that. If you feel more comfortable with this extension or that extension, if you can do what you need to do with it, that's the one you should use. And some of it's trial and error. And I've come across all the extensions and applications that I use through just 10 years of experimentation, and now I've got a pretty good set of tools that works great for me. The set of tools that's going to work for any of you is probably going to be a little bit different, but you gotta try things out. You gotta find that workflow. So there's not necessarily any one right way to do things. Find the way that works the best for you, and that's the way that's going to work the best for you. So does anybody have any questions, comments, extensions they want to recommend? Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So I think IDE, you were mentioning PHP Storm is available for Mac,
Yep.
Windows, and Linux. It's much cheaper, and it works on all three operating systems.
Yep. PHP Storm. I've heard. I have not used it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. So yeah, that's definitely an alternative.
It works. Hello.
So PHP Storm, check that out.
And the FTP client you mentioned, we use FileZilla most of the time.
FileZilla, okay.
FileZilla
Yeah.
is free. It's available for Mac, Windows, and FileZilla. It's free.
It's free, yeah. It's I've used that. Transmit isn't free, and it's much more powerful than Files. I've used FileZilla before.
And
It's not bad, but
the code editor, Sublime Text. We use Windows. We use Notepad++.
CodeKit plus. Okay.
Yeah, it's free.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Windows, right? Yeah.
For comparing two codes and merging them, Beyond Compare. Beyond Compare. It's of $50 only.
What's it called?
Beyond Compare.
Oh, Beyond Compare. Okay, cool, great.
And it's for Mac and Windows
Okay,
and Linux.
cool. I'll check that out. I haven't, like I said, I kind of use what I use. So there's so many different options out there, and that's
Give more options to the audience.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see.
A lot of here are not using Macs.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of know that, but that's like I said, it's what I know, and there's so many options out there. It's you can kind of get lost in that sea of trying all these different things out until you find something that works for you. But when you do find that thing that works for you, stick with it. Because that's sometimes it's hard to find. But those are great suggestions. Thank you. Anybody have any other suggestions, questions, comments? No? Well, thank you so much. Oh, you got a question there?
While mentioning the workflow using the Akiba backup, you have mentioned that we need to work on local Joomla and then move that backup to the development server, and then after that on production.
Yep.
So my question is that during moving the backup from development to production, so site may get down.
It could, yeah. I mean, it's kind of unavoidable, but the whole process, I mean, depending on what you're trying to do, that might not be the right solution for every website. That's just one way to do it. But in that scenario, yes, I'd have to take the live site offline while I did the install, but usually it takes about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, so I think that that workflow is fine for when you work with small websites. Means if you're dealing with a big, large clients,
Yes.
so who is paying you tons of money, in that case, that workflow, I doubt, will help you. So if you are, if you have 3-4 developers and many front-end developers are working on same instance, then that workflow will be difficult to manage this stuff.
Sure. Like I said, it's not going to work for every scenario, but it's just an example of how you could use it. I mean, like you said, small sites, it's definitely fine. If you have a larger enterprise type site, I mean, you're gonna have to have a whole different scenario going on with that, like some kind of a mirrored database or something like that. I mean, you could still do it with the key, but you couldn't necessarily do it the way I described with a very large site. And like I said, it's not going to work in every scenario, but there are ways to work around that. You could have different database prefixes or some kind of database synchronization. It's really it's going to depend on what you need to do. Like what I demonstrated there is not a one size fits all scenario. It's just a way to use it that maybe you wouldn't think of just from using a backup utility. So, but yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever the question he asked, I suppose the solution to that might be migrating to atomic deployments. So just a question to you: does any of those IDEs or tools support SSH into the server and managing atomic deployments?
I'm sorry. Could you say that again? I didn't understand the question.
Yeah. So whatever question he asked, I suppose the solution to that would be atomic deployments. So my question to you is: does any of those tools support supporting and managing atomic deployments?
I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time understanding you with your accent.
Atomic deployments. You have any idea about atomic deployments? Atomic deployments.
Oh yeah. I haven't. I'm sure you could do it. I haven't done that a lot though, so I'm probably not the best person to answer the question.
Okay.
Excuse me, let me try to answer you.
There's always a way to do stuff.
Let me try to answer you.
Yeah.
There are the basic approaches, like when we talk about the enterprise client. At that time, we can use either web shell or using cPanel. cPanel is quite faster and it is server-to-server transfer. So most probably 4 GB code we can transfer easily. And when he is talking about enterprise client, like if the client don't want the site to be offline, at that time we can change the DNS. Like if the site is pointing to some folder that is new or dev, so at the time after deployment, what we can do, we can change the DNS and let after 24-hour DNS will flush and then the site will automatically get to the new one.
Yeah, I agree to you. I don't have any concern with that. I was more of like atomic deployments. While performing atomic deployments, my question was, do any of these tools help in managing and supporting those atomic
For
deployments?
Atomic deployment and all these things, no. Because this is the proper way and we can use JIT and all
Okay,
this.
okay. No, atomic deployments. So means
Okay, guys, we gotta wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming out, and I really appreciate it. If you have any other questions for me, I'll be around all weekend. And thank you so much for coming to my presentation. And all this information is on my website, so thank you.